Wow, this is the last session, and it's a tough, session after this great performance. But good thing is we are going to have an intellectual, performance. Okay, we have three very, pronounced panelists. Rahul from Ripple, and Milind from Menyala, and then Nischint from Visa. Good. Okay, as I was introduced, I'm the head, president of HashTop Research. HashTop Research is a think tank established by the Hash Investment Group. I joined this group about 1.5 years ago, and before that, I was a former government official at the Korean, government. I spent more than 3 decades working for the Korean government. My last position was the Vice Minister of Finance. And I'm very much excited with this transformative power of this blockchain technology, especially in the area of finance. We are going to discuss today the role of stablecoins and CBDCs, especially in the context of Southeast Asia. So, three of us, so why don't you just as a quick intro, you introduce yourself and what you are doing.
Thanks so much, Webby, and pleasure to be here. My name is Rahul Advani. I'm the head of public policy for Ripple for Asia Pacific, based in Singapore, but I do spend a lot of time in Bangkok, so it's always a pleasure to come back here. Ripple, as you may know, is an enterprise blockchain company. We've been around for 10 years now, focused on removing frictions in cross-border payments. We started with that vision 10 years ago. We've built out our network over the last 10 years. We've since seen new innovations come about in stablecoins, CBDCs. We've also expanded into custody and tokenization of real-world assets. And happy to talk a bit more about our stablecoin and CBDC projects as we go through this panel. Thank you once again.
Milind?
Thanks, Rahul. Thanks, Webby. I am Milind Sanghavi. I am building a new cross-border payment startup with Temasek's blockchain incubator called Menyala. We believe there's a decent amount of fat in the current ecosystem that can be trimmed using technologies that come with the blockchain specifically when you look at cross-border. And so we're just starting out. I've been in the Web 2 world. I'm probably one of the uncool people in the room in the whole conference. I've been in Web 2 for over 20 years and worked across a bunch of Web 2 kind of fintech, quote-unquote, plays. And so looking forward to bringing Web 2 and Web 3 together to be able to solve customer problems. And I think it's really interesting we're going after the last panel, considering they were talking about payments as well. So how do you solve for some of these what historically in the old world have been edge cases? So super excited to talk about this. Thank you.
Also, just to say, you're probably not more uncool than a policy person. So
fair, man. That one you win. I agree.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nischint Sanghavi. Again, no relation to Milind here, but it's just a coincidence. We know each other for a while. I take care of our digital currency business for Visa or Asia Pacific. Again, within digital currency in Visa, it's a pretty broad spectrum, from on-ramp, off-ramp, to tokenized deposits, stablecoin, and then CBDC, and a lot of research along all of the way. And we'll probably dive into a few areas at some point here in the panel. But yeah, happy to be here in Bangkok.
Yeah, I'm going to throw one general question to our panelists, and after general question, I'll go by one to specific question to you and what you are doing. One general question is in relation to the Southeast Asia, the jurisdiction we are holding this conference. Southeast Asia, in the context of stablecoins, have two characteristics. First, compare this like South America or war-torn countries like Ukraine. These Southeast Asian countries enjoy relatively stable fiat currencies. Okay. The one condition is a relatively stable fiat currencies. And second characteristic is a very high adoption of these cryptocurrencies in this area. So in these two distinctive characteristics, what what would be the unique identity and role or the status of the stablecoins in this area? My question is whether stablecoin is regarded as an alternative to legacy project was systems, or is it regarded as primarily as a means to invest in cryptos? What do you guys, what are your views on these specific issues?
Perhaps I'll go first. I think, from our perspective, we see the adoption of stablecoins and crypto assets in the region more generally coming from the utility aspect that they bring, right? Utility, right? If you look at, what we do, cross-border payments, if you go through traditional rails, it's expensive, it's inefficient, and it costs you a lot, right? I forget the latest World Bank statistics, but I think it's in the region of global average is about 9.5% for cross-border payments for $200, right? That's a lot of money for some people. What stablecoins do, and crypto assets more general, is make that process more efficient, right? The transparency, the immutability of the blockchain means that you can effect those transfers much faster and for fractions of traditional rails, right? So we primarily see that, if you look at Asia Pacific, the diaspora over here, there's a lot of remittances between, intra-Asia, so within Asia itself, people sending from Singapore to the Philippines, for example, Singapore to Thailand, but also global, right? From Europe to Thailand, from the US to the Philippines. We see that the utility of stablecoins makes these remittances a lot more efficient and makes them faster.
Okay.
He's making the pitch for my startup, so I like it. I think that there's two different ways to do it. The reality is when you're in payments long enough, there's always this entire conversation of this is going to kill that. But the reality is one doesn't need to kill the other, right? It's much more about how does everything survive, and there will be people who want to do X and there are people who want to use Y. And so I think of it almost as everything has to survive in an ecosystem really, really well. And I think one of the panelists earlier was also talking about everybody tries to own every part of this. And I think the reality about stablecoins, obviously there's the programmability of it. There's a bunch of other things that add on, but the reality is going to be about how utility gets built. So, and it's not, to me, it's also about there isn't just stablecoin, right? And even in stablecoin, what we see very clearly is what asset, what network. There is still arbitrage between one asset on one network and the same asset on a different network. So I think it's going to come down to not just the transference of funds, but a lot of it comes down to who is going to build the ecosystems around stablecoins and CBDCs potentially to drive, changed behavior. But to your earlier question, I don't think one goes away and stablecoins and CBDCs take over everything. I'm sure it's in some investor pitch that some of my startup buddies are doing, but the reality is I think there's a co-living kind of concept across the ecosystem.
The utility is palpable, and the coexistence can be, likely.
Yeah, and I think just to add one more piece, and I think we spoke about this a little bit already, the piece is also going to be about as regulatory clarity emerges across CBDCs and stablecoins, it will bring more utility to it. So, a lot of regulatory clarity doesn't exist, right? We were talking about India a little bit as well. So as that comes in, it will solve for some of these things.
Thank you.
Yes, I think we do think of for digital currencies, stablecoins, CBDC, driving the future of financial services in some way. But I think more of an extension of the current rails, whether it's RTP or RTGS, and look at them from that perspective rather than replacing it, similar to what Milind is saying, right? Again, within Southeast Asia, we've seen some of the pilots in the CBDC space. They are still pilots, even though they're large-scale pilots in China and India. So we're monitoring those and see how that kind of affects. On the other side, you have the wholesale CBDC area where people like Hong Kong and Singapore have also been doing certain pilots. So I think that progress also needs to be made. But I think the key area, since we don't have that issue of the currencies not being stable in this side of the world, I think some of the key issues will be similar to what Rahul mentioned about the cross-border side and the 24/7 payments. And that has, of course, remittance is a big use case for that. But then other things are on the security side, on the commercial money side. There are a lot of different use cases that can come through, which is, whether it's delivery versus payment, payment versus payment. So I think that's the one. And then the second one, I think Milind touched upon, is programmability and other things which can drive all of this new use cases onto old payment rails. So I kind of be that layer on top of the existing payment rails and add that complexity with programmability and stuff. So
Very good. I'll move on to this specific question phase. Ripple lately, announced its plan to issue, dollar-backed stablecoins. So I wonder what would be your vision for issuing this dollar-backed stablecoins. Obviously, there are two, strong competitors, USDT and the USDC. And what would be Ripple's, vision for this new issuing new dollar-backed stablecoins?
So on April 4th, Ripple we announced our intention to issue a USD-backed stablecoin. Now, if you look at the stablecoin market today, I think, probably about 150 billion on a good day. But if you look at forecasts, I think Bernstein, published a forecast last year where they expect that the stablecoin market will grow to about 2.8 trillion by 2028, right? We're going to see increased adoption. And we feel that there is demand and there is a need for a well-regulated US-backed stablecoin. The key here being well-regulated, right? What we do is, we've been in this business for about 10 years now. We've worked with financial institutions where that bridge between TradFi and, crypto natives. And we see that there is a real use case for stablecoins, as we just discussed. So, looking at, the future state, right? We're not just, we're going to see that pie grow. There's going to be a much bigger pie. And we feel a large portion of that is going to be well-regulated stablecoins. And that's our intent. So, we're looking at, a stablecoin backed one-to-one with the USD. So that's going to be USD deposits, USD treasuries, and cash-like instruments. And it's going to be a regulated stablecoin. And that's going to give users the confidence that, this is something that we can adopt with the comfort of knowing that it's backed by regulations, it's backed by governance.
So your plan is subject to the promulgation of the statutory law on the stable coins? Are you going to issue after, for example, U.S. Capitol Hill passed, law on stable coins?
So the U.S. Regulatory environment is interesting right now, to say the least. But as it stands today, yes. So there is a draft, that's in place. But right now, regulation is at the state level. Right?
Yeah, state level, yeah.
So Ripple has about 40 money transfer licenses in the U.S. At the state level, across the various states. We also have a BIT license in New York. We also have a trust license through Standard Custody, who we just acquired out of New York as well. At the same time, we're regulated in Singapore. We have a major payments institution license in Singapore from the Monetary Authority of Singapore. We're also regulated in Ireland by the Central Bank of Ireland. We're on the VASP registry. So we're looking at, the universe of, regulators out there and which would be the appropriate fit for us. But the intent is to be a regulated stablecoin.
Okay. As for Visa, Visa is a dominant player in Web2 or legacy, payment system. But Visa is also quite active in, exploring, collaborations with these Web3 companies. So you are helping, many developing countries for, experimenting in CBDCs, and you also issued crypto-related and prepaid cards. So you are active in every area, like CBDs, helping CBDCs, issuing your own crypto prepaid card with the crypto.com, and exploring ways to issue stablecoins, and they're very impressed because you are already, very competitive Web2 business. Yes, you are still exploring this, ways to maintain your. You are striding into this Web3 industry as well. What's the secret? What's your vision?
So again, maybe I'll just go through all the key areas that we focus on, right? So I think it started off with a lot of the on-ramp side, where we want to make sure that Visa cards can be used at any Web3 merchant, whether it's an exchange, an NFT platform, metaverse, anything. You should be able to use your existing Visa card. So that's an ongoing business. Then we have an off-ramp side of things, which is what you mentioned, the Crypto.com cards. So we work with issuers like Crypto.com, a lot of the bigger exchanges, top 50 exchanges across the world. We have card programs with them to making sure that users are able to spend the digital currency balance in any Visa location right now. Third one is on stablecoins. So we today process 150 plus currencies in multi-currency environment, settle in 25 different currencies. We are hoping that digital currencies will be another currency there. We have started some early pilots with USDC, and we are hoping to add more currencies as we go along. A new area is tokenized deposit. Now, that's something we have been started in the last 12 to 18 months, working with the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And again, it's still very early stage doing pilots in that space. And then, of course, as you mentioned, on the CBDC side, we work with some of the big central banks, doing research, some of the consultation papers and stuff. So I think it's a pretty broad spectrum across. But while I can't talk about other Web2 players and what they're doing, I think we were one of the early movers in this space. And for us, it's very simple. Wherever people are talking about payments, we want to be there. And digital currencies is no exception. If you're talking about crypto, you're talking about stablecoin, which links to payments, we want to be part of the equation. We don't see this space as a threat. We do see the digital currency space as an opportunity for us and all of our clients as well. We aim to be that bridge between the digital currency ecosystem and our 15,000 plus financial institutions we partner with, as well as the 80 million plus merchants that we have. So I think it's a pretty big ecosystem where we're responsible for. So we want to make sure that we use our technological prowess and get any new technology on board to this entire ecosystem. So that's, I think, how we think about this.
Thank you. Milind, you're an investor based in this, Singapore and covering this Southeast Asia. And we are discussing this, the development of stablecoins in this area. In this context, which projects are you, covering in these days? Which projects attracts you most in these days?
Yeah, so Menyala is actually, we're an incubator, we're a venture builder, as we like to call it. And so I think the way we're looking about it is it's early in all of these spaces, right? Credit to Ripple, right? They're 10 years old, but they are doing certain things, they've been doing certain things in a certain way. We believe some of that can potentially be partnered with them to grow the pie, as you say, right? And I think what we look at is obviously, everybody's talking about Gen AI, everybody's talking about kind of core tokenization of real world assets. What kind of me and the company I'm building is going to be specifically focused on cross-border, primarily looking at, remittances, but to a certain extent using the atomic capacity of stablecoins or CBDCs to actually impact lives. Right. And the reality is, if you look at the current payment ecosystem, there are a lot of players making a decent chunk of money without providing that much value. I think there are certain players that absolutely provide value, and there are lots of players who are just kind of the extra hops. So what we're looking at, and that we do as a kind of incubator across the whole, is where are the extra hops or extra players, and how can they be intermediated with a long-term view on a build, right? Obviously, with who we come from and our kind of DNA, we're not looking at Horizon 1 plays. We're looking at Horizon 3, some Horizon 2, but mostly Horizon 3, Horizon 4 plays. And it's early. I think every time somebody tells me oh, this is, you're going to die soon, we're like, okay, come to me in 5 years and we'll see this. I think there have been people who are like, oh, no, Visa's going to die, somebody else is going to come. They've been around a long time. And I think there's enough fat and space in the ecosystem for everybody to build long plays, especially when it comes to payments.
Thanks. even though stable coins provide, obvious utilities, especially in this, Southeast Asia's, especially in the most prominent areas, as many of we echoed, remittance areas. But still, there are some, there is a tension, in surrounding stablecoins, and tension meaning, the regulators regard stablecoins as undermining the monopoly, monopoly power over this fiat currency. So they call it like a very formidable force undermining these FX controls. So we have this India and the China, and not only those two countries, there is a subtle the tension, between this stablecoin community, Web3 community, and these regulators. Do you see, any emerging consensus about the best way to coexist the merit of stablecoin and the role of regulation in this area?
I think it comes down to use cases, right? I think a lot of the times people ask me, well, Ripple, your solutions use digital assets like XRP, but at the same time you support stablecoin issuers, and now we're looking to issue our own stablecoin. Oh, and at the same time we're working with central banks on CBDC projects. Aren't you sort of competing across? I think the key takeaway is that we're not looking at a single asset future or a single chain future. The future is going to be a multi-asset, multi-chain future, and what you use will depend on the use case, right? And the key is going to be interoperability. You need to be able to move assets across chains, right? So a good example is, the Ripple stablecoin will be issued on the XRP ledger, but on Ethereum as well. So that allows you to use, the speed, the efficiency, the low cost of the XRP ledger, bridge that with the native smart contract capabilities of Ethereum. And that allows you more utility, right? So I think it just comes down to use cases. For some use cases, CBDCs will make the most sense. For some use cases, stablecoins will make the most sense. And when it comes to an interoperable and cross-border aspect, we feel that some assets like XRP will also make sense.
So you're not just insisting on XRPs, but rather make it compatible with EVM.
It's about the interoperability.
Wow.
Yeah, we agree on the.
It's a big step forward.
Yeah, we agree. I think it's early, right? If you start with the basis of it's early, and to me, and somebody who was an ex-regulator told me they're never going to issue stablecoin regulation because they're waiting for CBDCs to come in. And so for us, what we're building is going to be asset and network agnostic, right? So today it's CBDCs, or today it's stables, tomorrow it's CBDCs, and then there's digital fiat or digitized fiat. I think the reality is, as long as we can solve problems and we can build utility again across whatever it is, but I think the main part is also, as regulatory clarity improves, whatever the product may be, whatever the asset may be, if regulatory clarity improves, I believe it will also lead to a demystification of these products. So the number of conversations, I think we were speaking about this earlier, like you tell somebody a stable coin to somebody who's been in the Web 2 world, and they're like, oh, that's mad, like meme coin crypto. Not saying meme coin crypto is wrong, right? But that's a very different viewpoint. And I think the nuances are not known to the average person. And for us, what we're building as a startup is very clear, like, use what's there, use what's regulated, use the regulatory landscape where licenses have been given out, and figure out how to use what's out there and drive utility for the end customer. That's how we look at it.
Good.
So I think to add on to Rahul's point, I think interoperability is going to be a big point. And I think that's where I think we also want to play a big role as Visa to bring all of these networks together, play the bridge role, give that kind of common standards wherever possible. But we also see some of the lines blurring. I think we've started to see some of the big regulated institutions issue stable coins now. We've seen a couple of cases in Europe, some of them coming in APAC as well. So I think now it's no longer going to be like, oh, stable coins are remit of a private entity only, but you're starting to see banks come into this. So you're starting to see fintechs and other parts getting into the digital fiat game, right? So then I think all of these lines are going to blur eventually. And I think even central banks are still not sure whether they want retail CBDCs, and the use case part goes back to that, right? Like there's no real use case in some jurisdictions, while some places desperately need it. So I think it's still going to be very early. I think Milind keeps repeating that, but it's true. Like we are so early in the stage. While crypto's been there for 10, 12 years, but a lot of these developments on the money movement side has been very new. And I think we're still at round one probably, and it'll take about 5-7 years. So people that start thinking about it like, oh, it's 2 years, everything's going to change. But in reality, exactly what he said, right? It's going to be 5 to 7 years before we start seeing some real change happening.
Well, we have about 4 minutes, thanks, and 1 minute each for each of you. And my recurring question is the role of the Southeast Asia in this jurisdiction in spearheading this jurisdiction can be a test bed for best use case of the stable coins. What do you expect, down the road, and what will be the main challenges for making this, dream come true?
I think one is, the regulatory clarity aspect. We do have very progressive regulators in the region. You look at the MES in Singapore, HKMA in Hong Kong, Bank of Thailand and the Thai SEC, over here, Japan, Australia, everyone's looking at stablecoin regulations. Hong Kong is, they've opened up a regulatory sandbox for stablecoin issuers to say, well, come, let's work together. Let's see what this means, right? And then we'll regulate. So I think, the approach we're seeing in Asia is not to ban, it's to regulate responsibly, and that attracts adoption.
We agree that from a startup perspective that's even raising right now, we look at this market as a really good test bed. There is regulatory clarity, but also because of economic migration, the use case that we keep looking at, the amount of money that's moving in, if you can join the dots and deliver a better product. I'm not just talking about financial inclusion. I'm talking about changing people's lives on a daily basis and what technology can do for them. And I think, while it'll start here, what is also interesting is while the regulators here are being progressive, the other regulators also look at them as kind of they tell you what direction they're going to move in. And so we're hoping that this leads to a much larger movement around clarity and clear licensing so that the arbitrage goes away.
So I think, again, the regulatory clarity point's been made pretty well. But I think what's also happened is it's a phased regulatory clarity, right? So it's been a lot of experimentation-driven stuff. Like you've seen the sandboxes on all the different initiatives, whether it's CBDC, tokenized deposit, to some extent consultation papers. So there's been a lot of experimentation with the ability to do that kind of thinking. Like instead of just saying, okay, this is a launch and now figure it out. I think it's like, okay, let's think about it. Let's see how it goes. Let's ask the industry. So it's very industry driven. It's very, public-private partnership driven. So I think that's the right approach. And that's why I think it's probably moving in the right direction, I would say.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to moderate the very last session in this inaugural Southeast Asia Blockchain Week. And the very interesting, we have 3 Indians who work in Singapore, and Rahul is once again, it's very good to see you again. I met Rahul first in Bangalore and in Indian Blockchain Week, and thank very much, guys, and hope to keep up the good work down the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.